Now that we've learned a little bit about rectangular form and polar form, I'm going to teach you how to go from rectangular form to polar form. So basically, if we're given a number in the form z equals x plus yi, how do we put that in the form of r cis theta? And so the two things we're going to use is the tangent of theta equals y over x, which was introduced in the video that described how to find the argument of a complex number, and r equals the square root of x squared plus y squared, which is just how you find the modulus of a complex number. And so I have three example problems that we're going to work through here. So first of all, we have z sub 1. So y equals 1 and x equals 1. So the tangent of the argument of our first complex number is going to be equal to 1. Both the x and the y components are positive, so that puts us in the first quadrant. So we know that theta sub 1 is equal to pi over 4. And if that's not immediately obvious based on the quadrant and the value of tangent of theta, you need to go back and you need to review your unit circle and those values, because those are going to become really important when you're going from rectangular to polar form. So then, knowing that, we then need the modulus of z sub 1, which will be r sub 1, which is the square root of 1 squared plus 1 squared, which is equal to root 2. And so that tells us that z sub 1 is equal to root 2 cis of pi over 4. So then for z sub 2, we're going to do something very similar. The tangent of theta 2 is going to be equal to negative 1 over 1, which is negative 1. Our x is positive, and our y is negative, which puts us in the fourth quadrant. So that tells us that even though this is the same, very similar to the tangent of theta in the previous problem, that it's going to be negative pi over 4, since we're in the fourth quadrant. And then r sub 2 is going to be the square root of 1 squared plus negative 1 squared, which is going to be root 2 again. So z sub 2 equals root 2 cis of negative pi over 4. And then for our third problem, tangent of theta 3 is equal to negative root 3 over negative 1, which is root 3. Again, we draw ourselves a set of axes, negative x, negative y. We're in the third quadrant, so that tells us that theta 3 is going to equal negative 2 pi thirds. And then when we calculate r sub 3 square root, we have negative 1 squared plus negative root 3 squared, which is the square root of 1 plus 3, which is 2. So z sub 3 equals 2 cis of negative 2 pi thirds.